fellow Exorcists, and welcome to the Lair of the Film Exorcist. Tonight, we will be taking a look at Star Wars Jedi Apprentice, Book 5, The Defenders of the Dead. The Defenders of the Dead live in the past while they destroy the future. They face a revolt of the young, a band of rebels led by two teenagers, Cersei and Neild. 13-year-old Obi-Wan Kenobi and his Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn are not supposed to take sides in any war. But once Obi-Wan meets Cersei and Neild, he feels he must join their fight, even though Qui-Gon forbids it. The rebellion has become personal, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are on opposite sides. Now, let's move on to my opinion. Now, you guys know me. I love Star Wars. I really do. But this book series is so hard to get through. I mean, I am a huge fan of audiobooks for a reason. Because with those, you can just listen to them, take in the story, understand better. Where with books, because of my autism and my ADHD, it makes it very hard to read even the simplest of books like this. So, when it came to this book, I will admit it took me a lot longer, or a lot less time than the last book we read, Marks of the Crown. But, yeah, this was not easy to get through. Now, I will admit, I did love this book. I mean, it got a whole lot better near the end when we start learning about the tactics, the guerrilla tactics of the young in this book. We learn that because of this fight, Obi-Wan again is becoming conflicted with his choice. Like, he even calls out on his master for breaking the rules in the previous book, because Qui-Gon calls him out for stealing a starship, going out with Cersei, or Cersei, as I like to call her, and Neild on their guerrilla mission to distract the Ilan and the Dan. Two cities, two species, two different people who have been fighting for years. And because of this, we see a lot of conflict in this with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. They still haven't created their bond. They fully haven't created their Master Padawan bond to the point that they can communicate with each other and know what the other is feeling. And this causes a lot of conflict in this. While Obi-Wan is filled with anger and filled with fire for the revolution that he's seeing happen on this planet, and for the people that are essentially the same age as him, very similar to the servant boy in the last book, I honestly find this to be a precursor to the Battle of Mandalore, when Obi-Wan decides to leave Queen Satine to deal with her problems after essentially, instead of staying and fighting with her, he goes back to the Jedi, where here, Obi-Wan is having a similar conflict, because he feels for this cause, and he actually thinks he could do something for these people. I mean, he sees the tragedy, and yeah, this book came out in the 90s, and this was around the time that we were still fighting the Afghan War. Actually, it's before the Afghan War. It was more during the Iraq and the Iran War, long after the Korean and the Vietnam War, where in places like Iraq and Iran during that time, while there was influence from Russia for a short time, or for a long time, the people of both countries fighting against the Russians and then the Americans, we now see that here. And we saw that in the Afghan War, which essentially just recently ended, but it's been going on for more than a decade. With that war, you saw a lot of children and other young people being forced to join up with the armed forces as child soldiers, essentially putting their lives on the line as suicide bombers. And this is very heavily shown in this. Like, for generations, these children have had no parents. Like, their parents have all died because of the wars that have been going on Melandon. Because nobody knows what they're fighting for. They just know they're fighting. And to be honest, this is a theme throughout our world. Personally, like, there's the Irish Revolution, the fight between Russia and the Ukraine, that is still going on and has been going on for hundreds of years. There's just so much war in our world, and that is reflected here. I mean, you also see the young resistance group. You could feel that they're like the people that we, the Americans, were trying to help, trying to train to fight against the Taliban and ISIS and all these other terrorist groups. You can see that, and in a way, Obi-Wan in this book is like America, because he's trying to help them the best he can, because the young are done watching their families die. Cersei, fully herself, has to watch her father, Wahuti, essentially fight a war that's never gonna end. I mean, he's one of the main politicians for the Malind, and he's essentially fighting till there's nothing left of him. I mean, throughout this book, you hear about both the Dun and the Malin, literally most of them having to use breathing masks for most of their life. They're missing limbs, their bodies are scarred. They're literally using scrap metal to fight each other because this war has been going on for so long and their resources are being strained heavily. This book literally takes a look at what happens when a war goes too far. Or, like, in this book, they talk a lot about how both cities are essentially turned to rubble. People are forced to live in rubble because they're fighting to their last breath for a war that half of them don't even remember the cause for. They just know that they hate each other. And they force their children into these work camps. I haven't really talked about Neild, who is the leader of the young, essentially, making their strategies and essentially leading them. Yeah, he has no father, and all three of his brothers were killed with his father in the recent war, so it's just him. He's been alone since he was like 8 years old because his cousin was forced to fight after she took him in, and he's been doing his best to gather the young and essentially fight this never-ending war. Because of Obi-Wan, they do get a foothold somewhat. Like, we get to see our first technical starfighter battle in this book, with Obi-Wan flying the Jedi cruiser, or the transport that him and Qui-Gon come on to come save their fellow Jedi, Jedi Knight Tal, who is essentially who Qui-Gon grew up with, who was supposed to be calling for peace or trying to bring the world to peace, but instead she ends up getting brutally harmed and is held as a hostage. But yeah, with these three in this starship, they are essentially working to destroy the proton shield generators that are protecting the city from the rest of the young that have been living on the farmland outside. And essentially this causes a bigger problem because then the elders of the Dan and the Meland are essentially okay with killing their young, killing their children, their grandchildren, anyone that opposes them, and threatens to end the war until Qui-Gon comes in and explains to them, are you really okay with killing your own children? Where the young are kind of okay with it too, because they're tired of the elders essentially forcing them into essentially slavery for a war that they don't even want. So it comes to the point where we leave off with Obi-Wan choosing to leave the Jedi to help the young, while Qui-Gon and Tal go back to the Jedi Temple to get her help.
3 days later.
The young are literally being bombed by the elderly, who somehow out of nowhere gain these starships, which originally I thought there was no weapons other than the floaters, they call them, or the land speeders that are littered all over the capital city. That's essentially where we go from here until book 6, which I will read and review later on. But this is a very heavy book for children. Like, it's teaching children about the costs of war and how sometimes war will never end. Like, some people are just born to fight or are so filled with hatred that they will literally fight till the last man. And again, this is a big topic that has been dug into our history for years, and that's why we've had so many wars so far. Essentially, this is what we've been born into, and I count myself lucky, and I count many of us lucky, that we weren't born in a war-torn country, because there is peace, and I'm hoping in the 6th book, Obi-Wan is able to help them find peace. Whether it's through the sheer luck of Qui-Gon hopefully coming back, which I'm pretty sure he's going to come back, because this book series is literally called Jedi Apprentice, and we do see Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace, and there is another book called Master and Apprentice, so yeah, I'm pretty sure Qui-Gon's gonna come back, save his Padawan's ass again, and they're gonna win this war and gain peace. Yeah, I'm giving this book a 9 out of 10 for essentially opening a lot of people's eyes to this heavy-hearted topic, and while the beginning is a bit slow, this is a really good book, and I did enjoy it for the most part. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and click the little notification bell for more videos, and stay tuned for our next video. We're probably gonna do Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Disappointed!
Or maybe a Pixar movie, we haven't decided. But yeah, have a great night, guys, and again, be glad that you don't live in a war-torn world, because according to this book, it is really bad. Have a great night.